Welcome to the Potboiler. I'm Patrick Hughes, and this is The Hero Business, Part 2. Potboiler is an old term for pulpy paperback genre writing that I think deserves to be your hero. Let's do the intro. Eric is an exceptional young man that has spent his life being told that the things that make him special are flaws and limitations. He just wants to help. Helping a stranger at a moment of vulnerability is a complex thing. It's an intrusion, even if it's the right thing to do. As Eric begins his court-mandated therapy, his friendship with Molly, the proprietress of the neighborhood's grocery store, takes on a new dimension when he intervenes during an attempted robbery at her store. The episodes of this story will be offered with no embedded commercial interruptions. Visit patrickhughes.ca for links to me and to my other projects. Please stick around after the story for some very light business. Enjoy. Let's play the music. The Hero Business, Part 2, Chapter 3. The city changed when the sun went down, and Eric knew the shift would bring him someone in need. Cold pins and needles rushed past the back of his neck as he felt mistrust surrounding him. That mistrust became an antipathy and grew within those around him as the sun came to rest and as he continued to walk. Stepping from an alley along Broadway of looming neon, asphalt, and glass stretched before him. From beneath a mixture of yellow and pink fluorescence, Eric met the eyes of a young woman who didn't seem to belong where she stood. She wore form-fitting clothes that could not have provided her with any warmth. She glittered with jewelry and makeup, contrasting her dreary surroundings. Her demeanor was strangely confident. She proudly looked about, making eye contact with the passers-by, and most kept their eyes to themselves. When he passed her, she gave him an odd smile, as though she knew him and felt familiar with him. Her smile captivated him until her interest faded and she found new eyes to grasp. Eric had seen many prostitutes before on his walks, but this girl just didn't seem to fit. He reached the corner, crossed at the light, and turned back to see a man approaching the same young woman. The man had the same familiar look, smiling into her face, only friendlier. His look captivated Eric in a different way. From down and across the street, Eric's eyes intensified as he watched the man grab a hold of the congenial young woman. The girl twitched and struggled like a child, with his hands locked around her arm near the shoulder, but she didn't scream. The man's predatory smile blazed in Eric's eyes. Neither of them noticed his approach. The man's grin was broken as a strange hand wrapped around his right forearm. Before he could protest, Eric sent him flying into the storefront window behind him. The impact violently wobbled the massive plate glass pane. The force he used to break the lecherous man's hold had throwing the young lady back to the ground. Eric didn't notice her fall, as the attention remained on the figure within his grasp. Following the man to the window, he saw that the force of his impact had dazed the man momentarily. Leading him into the nearest alley by the collar of his jacket, Eric mentally prepared himself for his intimidating encounter. Just as the man at his mercy began to start to whimper and twitch, Eric heard the girl's voice behind him. "Wait!" she screamed. The anxious tone confused Eric. Confusion grew as he turned to see her following them with her hand outstretched. "What do you think you're doing?" Capitalizing on the moment of diverted attention, the man slipped from Eric's grip and bolted into the shadows of the alley. Eric's attention remained captured in the young woman's chastising scowl. He then noticed over her shoulder 2 men wearing suits emerged from a car parked down the street. They spoke into radios and rushed past Eric into the alley. "You idiot!" The young damsel growled as she rose to her feet, refusing Eric's hand and regaining her composure. "Do you know who that was?" He had no idea, but kept a puzzled expression focused directly on her fierce exchange. "That bastard's butchered 5 hookers in 2 months. Do you realize how close we were?" Again, the answer escaped the bewildered young man. "I should arrest you for obstruction." She shook her head a couple of times before giving Eric a last look of disgust and stomping off towards the car. Eric's furrowed expression followed her and remained on her as she spoke into another radio, started the car, and sped off to the corner. Whirling tires whistled on the damp, smooth pavement. Eric watched a puddle that glistened under the streetlight wrinkle as the tires ripped through it, unable to shake the wrench of confusion from his face. Next to the puddle, he could see the young lady's lipstick had fallen from her purse when she tumbled to the ground. A shade of red reminded him of the smile she gave him earlier and the way her lips cut across her face when she screamed at him. He refastened the lid and stared at the shiny black casing as he walked. It was 3 more hours before his walk finally brought him home. All the while, his eyes watched his feet, and he replayed the evening repeatedly in his mind. As his worn-out sneakers took turns moving forward over the sidewalk like opposing pendulums, Eric grappled at a reason for the young woman's anger. Though he understood that she worked with the police, he still couldn't fathom how attacking that man could have been wrong. He kept wishing to himself that he hadn't knocked her down. He considered that maybe if he hadn't hurt her or dirtied her outfit, that she wouldn't have lashed out. Eric's eyes hid behind his wrinkled brow. Resentment or disinterest didn't occur to him, while confusion curled his demeanor. It was as though the sky had been proven purple or the morning sun didn't rise. He tried to help her, and he hindered her. He stood between the bad guy and his victim, and still the pins and needles shivered over his skin. No good deed goes unpunished. Dr. Harmon would warn Eric that helping people, intervening into their lives, was always a precarious gamble. People aren't always ready to be helped. The warm feeling of accomplishment that Eric felt when he helped somebody was rarely symbiotic as a byproduct for the person he helped. If they weren't panicked or racked with stress or and a feeling of gratitude, they were resentful of the inadequacy or the helplessness throbbing in them. Very few people are ready for a hero, and nobody was ready for Eric. More than one woman he'd tried to help up from a fall or pull from the grasp of an intended purse snatcher had mistaken his intention for some kind of assault. Superman doesn't look like the kind of guy who needs to attack his woman, so no one assumes he does so. One of his favorite deeds earlier in his career was helping the elderly across the street. If days went by and he couldn't find anyone to help, he would stop at one of the major intersections on the way home from school. Standing off to the side of the crosswalk, he would wait for an elderly person to approach and set upon them like a well-intentioned salesperson. Many of them were far more willful and less feeble than expected. "What do you think you're doing, son?" "I'm trying to help you across the street." "Well, it's very nice of you, but I don't need any help. Aren't you a little old to be a Boy Scout?" "How old are you?" 17. "Like I said, this is nice of you, but let me go." "But I'm supposed to help." "No, thank you. But unhand me." Returning home from school on a similar day through the pathway behind the mall, Eric came upon a young man and a woman engaged in an encounter that immediately sent him to the rescue. His arms pinned her to the wall on either side of her. Her arms pushed and probed about his torso. A moan emanated from her that sounded somewhere between pain and fear. Clenching the young man's coat by the collar, he threw him backward into the fence on the far side of the path. Both teens groaned in wonderment as their embrace was torn apart. They were both stunned momentarily, expecting to encounter an intervening parent. Both lashed out at the well-intentioned Eric as they realized who had interrupted their after-school makeout session. On Eric's 18th birthday, he set out for a walk on his own after another forgettable birthday dinner. He walked up and down the streets of his suburban neighborhood, wondering how his 18th year would be different. When across the road he saw a man with a gun robbing the gas station. Eric dashed into the store, threw his arms around the man's throat and fastened a headlock as the desperate man fired shots wildly into the ceiling tiles. The cashier and customer screamed as their peril boiled over. He squeezed the man's wrist until the gun fell. The man writhed and wheezed as he tried to escape, until Eric lost his balance and fell into a bank of display shelves. The large rack of shelves tipped under their combined weight, crashing through the large plate glass front window. As he rose to his feet with the man's neck still clenched in his arm, a police car plowed to a halt in the parking lot in front of him. Though the congratulations were ample from the police and the bystanders, praise was not the first thing on the gas station owner's mind. "What were you thinking?" I just wanted to help." "Oh, I see. The money in the cash register is insured by the franchise. It doesn't cost me anything if all they get away with is money. We'd all be better if you just minded your own business. Do you have any idea what it's going to cost me to fix this store?" My insurance rates are going to go crazy. Oh, no, I had no idea. Do me a favor. Next time you want to be a hero, be one somewhere else. Eric was certain that he didn't do what he did for the praise. He was more certain that he didn't do it to be yelled at. As he walked home that night, he couldn't shake the notion that the owner yelled at him, not because of the damage to his store, but for the same reason everyone else did. He knew that he would always appear inferior. Inferiority filled his mind as he paced slowly back to his apartment, the bellowing scolding of the undercover policewoman still ringing in his ears, while the store owner from his adolescence bellowed in his memory. Eric's apathy towards the superficial was apparent to anybody that crossed his path. When you don't care about the name brands you brandish, shape of your body, or the untrendy way your hair is placed, or other gospels of our idols, you tend to wear a banner over your head. It says, I don't respect myself, so I haven't earned your respect. Actions may speak louder than words, but people still have to be ready to listen. He returned home under a cloud of failure. He spent the evening staring at anything around him that would catch his attention. The night dragged by as the ceiling over his head offered little counsel. So, why do you think she was angry with you? This policewoman you tried to help. Dr. Maynard was enthralled by the outlay of emotion he was witnessing from Eric, though it was still rigid by normal standards. In the 3 previous visits, he'd made every ethical attempt to access his patient emotionally. Though Eric's demeanor remained calm and subdued as he explained the events of the previous evening, Maynard recognized the first visible chink in his emotional shield. You could tell there was the briefest of agitation. He looked forward to achieving success, accessing this young man. Do you feel that you did something to incur her anger, Eric? I did push her down, accidentally. You pushed her. Well, she fell when I grabbed the guy who grabbed her. Was she hurt? No, but I may have ruined her outfit. Maynard smiled and then retracted it quickly. So this man you grabbed, he was the man from the news who had been assaulting prostitutes, murdering them in some cases. Almost under his breath, he spoke in revelation. Eric, you could have been hurt. I wasn't worried. Eric's eyes met the doctor's with an intimidating certainty. I just wanted to help. Patient log entry, April 4th. I believe I have identified an integral part of Eric's motivation. He's told me on several occasions about his interactions with others and how he tries to help them. Most, if not all, the interactions he discusses involve his good deeds. I intend to probe this issue further. It should offer a great deal of insight into this young man's true character. Does he seek out these situations? What does he derive or gain from these situations? And if his intention is vigilantism, where lies the root of this motivation? With every sentence, Maynard found himself more intrigued. Not only did Eric present him with the most challenging of puzzles, but also he genuinely intrigued him as a person. As a patient, Eric had barriers without locks. He provided no answers, but offered no resistance. He had no evidence of any disorder in his conscious mind. In place of wit, charm, and a trained sociability, he presented a complete lack of presumption. A part of Eric's brain was somewhat dysfunctional. Sigmund Freud would have called it his superego, the fine-tuning that civilized society expected of him without wanting to tell him. He spent his life imitating and reacting, free of a persona of his own. The absence of that function's effectiveness left him unable to grasp some higher concepts and kept him from excelling scholastically or earning success in a conventional sense. Life without the superego's etiquette also robbed him of the opportunity to mature into cynicism, mistrust, ambition, and general malice. He never sampled the taste of jealousy or the pride of victory, wrath, or greed. These facts were apparent to anyone who engaged with him in the briefest of conversations. Patient log entry, April 7th. To my surprise, Eric is quite willing to discuss his good deeds, his missions, or his walks, as he calls them. He speaks of them like most would discuss a vocation, almost with an air of pride. He tells me he walks a lot. When I ask him why he walks so much, he tells me it makes him feel right. What still puzzles me is the nature of his association. What spurs him to take these walks and to seek out people to help, to put himself in danger? I feel that a great deal of the answers surrounding this young man revolve around this motivation. Does it distress you that the young woman was very angry with you? No. But you would have preferred her reaction to be more pleasant. I guess I really didn't think about her reaction when I did it. Then, Eric, why did you do it? Why do you try to help? I'm just supposed to help. Chapter 4. Home is sanctuary. Home is the haven that provides warmth and love to those lucky enough to dwell within one. Eric had never felt the security and the warmth of his roots spreading deeply through the foundation of a house, always happy to welcome him in with open arms. He never had a place to run to. He didn't know how to answer people when they asked where he was from, aside from providing a current address. He had never belonged. Eric's dwelling would be best characterized as modest. He kept a standard one-bedroom apartment in a quiet building. He had the necessary furniture and housewares, an acceptable wardrobe, and a television. A handful of pictures that were hung for him decorated the pale, uncolored walls. The fire escape doubled as a balcony, where Eric kept a comfortable chair. He watched people on the street with far greater interest than those on his television. In the place of open arms, a soft purr welcomed Eric when he returned. A cat that had shown up one day and that he had never named shared his home. When the cat kept returning to be fed, Eric decided that they could benefit from each other, and the cat found no reason to dispute. Both Eric and the cat were creatures of routine. Their world was smaller than others. Contentment was the accepted substitute of aspirations and elation. The cat's routine consisted of nightly prowls, a bowl, a water dish filled once a day. and the window to the balcony up left open a crack. Eric's routine was found in his light nightly prowls. A select few television shows, a strict cycle of his limited wardrobe, and some weekly errands. Thursday was grocery day. Thursday was his favorite. 2 blocks down and 2 blocks over was McKee's Grocery, one of those general stores that exists as the beating heart of the neighborhood, source of more than food and supplies, hospitality and gossip. It was the neighborhood's Sunday dinner table. Frank McKee, the store's founder and proprietor, knew the name of everyone that came around and had a private running joke that he would build with each customer and with every visit. It had been almost 5 years since Frank had passed away, leaving the family business in the hands of his eldest daughter, Margaret, known to her patrons as Molly. Just shy of her 24th birthday, life and responsibility had managed to steal from Molly most of the youthful glow that emanates from most young women. Mother had died a short time before her father, leaving a household and 3 younger sisters on the shoulders that could only precariously handle the weight. Her duty left her unable to consider her sacrifice. She still had a smile for every customer, especially one for Eric. Molly was the reason Thursday was Eric's favorite. Girls hadn't taken control of his youth the way they tended to with most men. As many with Molly's regular customers, the motherly, unconditional quality of her smile filled that little emptiness that made their visits maybe a little bit longer than they had to be. Eric had been coming on Thursdays for almost 2 years, long before establishing his usual timing. Eric had a shopping list that never varied. Occasionally, Molly would suggest a new flavor of cat food that had come in, but she was careful not to intrude on Eric's routine. If she had time, she would gather his groceries for him and have them ready at the counter for him precisely at 9:30 a.m. She would ask how the cat was doing. Eric would return the question concerning Molly's sisters. They would each thank each other and look forward to the next Thursday. Eric would never have noticed, but Molly's goodbye and delicate wave had an extra ring when he came by. Thursdays were Molly's favorite, too. The 2 spots on his carpet where his feet dropped from his bed in the morning, the path from those 2 spots to his closet, then from the closet across the once plush carpet to the bathroom had been worn into an unmistakable trail. He followed each almost the same way he always did. The only noticeable difference was that it was Thursday morning. He stopped to pet the cat as it ate, and he rushed out the door. The cat looked up from his bowl, as if almost to realize that Eric never rushes. Without the intentional use of a clock, Eric had arrived precisely at 9:30 for almost 2 years. Molly's look of slight shock was almost unwelcoming as he stepped through her door that day at 9:15. "Eric, you're early." He nodded thoughtfully and started down the first leg of his normal route through the aisles. Just after he grabbed his favorite cereal and just before reaching his bread, Eric stopped at the cat food section. He hadn't planned on buying cat food that week as his roommate was in adequate supply, but for some reason one of the labels caught his eye. Eric was a creature of his routine. Very seldom did he stop to consider things. When the cat first came to take up residence, Molly showed Eric her best deal in cat food. Henceforth, his hand chose the same brand without consideration. He now found himself wondering how a cat would interpret chicken or tuna from the contents of the tiny can? And if so, did they like it? Just as that thought begun deciding whether the cat would prefer an imitation of poultry or fish, heavy boots stomping their entrance throughout the store halted his train of thought. He returned to his cat food comparison as Molly engaged in conversation with an unfamiliar voice that matched the boisterous entrance. He ignored their conversation at first, concentrating instead on the shift from his shopping routine. Man's voice suddenly intruded into the back of his thoughts. It wasn't the content of his conversation with Molly. He heard her discuss and argue prices and money with many customers in the past. It was the forceful quality of his words and the tone in which he delivered them, like his heavy boots that stomped against the floor. Eric shook his head as the words from the front of the store wafted down the aisle, causing the tiny goosebumps to rise in the back of his neck. He walked slowly around the back of the shelving of that aisle. Molly came into view first. Her eyes stared forward, the stubborn mixture of strength and a mortal fear. Her strength was waning in the form of small tears dropping down the side of her face. Her lips pursed and twitched, trying to stay sneered and defiant. Eric's eyes grew to match hers as he eased around the corner some more, and the source of her expression came into his view. The gun was held inches from her face, while at the other end of the imposing thug looked into Molly with an inverse combination of her strength and fear. His weight nervously shifted from one foot to the other. The skin around his fierce expression was moist with adrenaline. His thumb reached over the back of his gun as he slowly pulled back the hammer. Molly's eyes closed, and her body forced out a short squeal of fear. Come on, bitch. The money. Before I pull this trigger. I told you. It's 9:30. We don't have any money. There's barely $20 from the float. Her voice was shaky. Bullshit. What you got in the safe? There's nothing in the safe. We deposited last night. I swear. You're going to die this minute if you don't cough up some money. Eric's eyes tightened. A box of cereal, a carton of milk, and a can of chicken-flavored cat food fell to his feet. He forgot he was holding them. The milk erupted over his shoes. The mess failed to interest him as he started up the aisle. Cold chills ran to the tips of his fingers, and heat burned in his stomach up to his throat. His knuckles turned white as they locked, and he advanced on the gunman. Chapter 5. Dr. Benjamin Maynard always let out a long breath the moment Eric Verity left his office. Most would classify the expression as a sigh of relief. It was certainly relief, but not from a dislike or discomfort. Their sessions required a focus that strained every part of his professional instinct. Eric was the embodiment of the ultimate analytical challenge. He was peaceful, pleasant, and honest, yet a puzzle hidden at the end of a subconscious maze. Though the sessions were physically and mentally draining, they had become the high point of the doctor's practice. Shall I send in Mrs. Chaikin, doctor? "Give me 5 minutes, Sophie." He needed some time to absorb his newest thoughts on his favorite patient and to hum and rub his temples. Recent weeks with Eric had given a new bounce to Benjamin Maynard's steps. He'd been rejuvenated when he didn't know he was drained. His dinner table conversation was more engaging. Time that he spent with his children had greater quality, and the kisses he shared with his wife before work left them both breathless. At first, Catherine found Benjamin's new behavior erratic. She considered the possibility that her husband was overcompensating for some guilt he was harboring. She immediately considered that he had taken a mistress, something she had begun discussing with her sisters. They had always suspected his guilt. Her suspicions had grown to a near fever pitch when suddenly they were dashed. Benjamin rarely spoke of his patients, but he was unable to keep Eric confidential. The exuberance that filled his speech as he rambled on about his new patient told his wife that his affair was not sexual in nature. She saw in his eyes what he had been lacking. She thanked Eric Verity in her own mind and blessed him for his intricacies. She missed her husband's sparkle. Benjamin Maynard was one of those people born with that sparkle in his eye. It drew him to people and ensnared their interest. It confirmed to others the inevitability of his success. From the moment of his birth, everybody knew Benjamin Maynard was destined for something big. Benjamin succeeded at every attempt from his first baby step. His successes were the type that sat well with people. He was a captain of every team and a noted participant at every event. Students' council president, he was valedictorian, volunteer, tutor, and the dream of every girl at his school. His resume at 18 bested many of those twice his age. He was accepted into the Harvard medical program a year before the normal eligibility. Some would argue that his father's name had garnered his acceptance, but in truth was due to his perfect grade point average, extensive club memberships, and valuable endorsements made by professors without his knowledge. Catherine had been in love with Benjamin since they were 12. They began dating in high school, and they had clinched the king and queen of the prom long before their senior year. Catherine reflected Benjamin's perfection. It was a light that she basked under. It was a warmth she happily committed her life to. As a couple, they had amassed all the right possessions. Their luxurious house stood on a beautiful property in the right part of town. They had twin daughters and one son. Matthew was the spitting image of his father and showed an interest in several activities. The girls, Diane and Denise, were beautiful, well-mannered young women. Approaching his 20th wedding anniversary, everything was as it should have been for someone like Benjamin. He entered psychiatry because he loved deciphering people, and he relished the idea of having the power to show his patients how to appreciate their quality of life. His career boasted an endless list of accomplishments, scholarly articles, and awards. He was often asked back to Harvard to speak at seminars and graduations. He loved psychiatry because of patients like Eric. Eric presented the doctor with a new challenge. He wasn't there because of a sleep disorder or because his self-esteem was low. He knew that Eric would benefit from loosening the restraints that kept him from connecting with others. Benjamin's own benefit was self-evident every moment he spent with his enigmatic patient. The positive inspiration provided through their meetings spilled over into the sessions with his other patients. He found himself wanting to thank Eric, as though their dynamic had reversed and he had become the recipient of some kind of therapy. Patient log entry, May 18. I believe I am making progress with Eric. Though the source of his distance from others and his apparent learning handicap remain uncertain, it does seem that he has a growing trust for me. Where before he would answer my questions with 1 or 2 word answers, I now find him far more inviting. I've learned, for instance, that he has a cat, and I find this significant because it would indicate the capacity for him to bond and care for others. Furthermore, I have grown to learn about his strictly regimented routine. To test his obsessive tendencies, I've had Sophie reschedule sessions to various parts of the week, sometimes with very short notice. To these changes, some of which I am certain conflict with his most valuable rituals, he seems very accommodating. This denotes a higher level of organizational skill than I had anticipated. I'm starting to completely rule out the chance of autism, which was my initial suspicion. The final and most pressing subject is that of his heroic delusions. He has mentioned, reluctantly at times, his penchant for intervening in violent situations involving complete strangers. Though I can't see the motivation or even the capacity to lie in Eric, some of his stories seem too unbelievable. These delusions may themselves prove helpful. My immediate concern is to interpret the level of the truth in Eric's stories. Thank you for coming, Eric. You're welcome. Eric found his favorite spot on the doctor's couch. He never reclined, always sat erect. Maynard slipped into his wingback chair and, with an expression of relaxed contentment, focused, and concentration, they were ready to start. Well, Eric, is there anything you'd like to discuss today? Eric looked down and inspected the carpet between his shoes intently. No, there isn't. Well, that's okay. I have some things I would like to talk about. You don't mind, do you? Despite the familiarity that had grown between them, Maynard still spoke to his patient with a tone that bordered somewhat on patronizing. But Eric didn't notice. No, I don't mind. Well, first off, how was your week? The normal pleasantries bounced between the two men as Maynard did his normal introductory probing. As usual, he could detect nothing. Eric was his normal, pleasant self. Maynard's fascination baited him to inquire about any recent good deeds. A smile slowly crept up Eric's face. There was a man, Thursday. He was going to hurt Molly. Molly? The girl from the grocery store, right? This man was going to hurt her. I had to stop him. Did you hurt him? No. Well, a little, yes. What did you do? I stopped him. His unintentional, evasive answers were almost boyishly charming. Just as Maynard moved into the next step of the verbal dance he had become accustomed to with Eric, a switch clicked on. Wait a minute. He started to recall a short blurb he had read that week toward the end of his newspaper's city section. Your grocery store isn't McKee's, is it, on 48th? Yes, it is. Eric. It was you. It was you I read about. He found his jaw getting heavier with every word. You stopped a holdup. He'd forgotten his normal, scholarly facade, the one that stayed up even in front of Catherine. He was naked in his disbelief. He was armed. There were shots fired. You injured that man. The image of the young man before him was reforming in Maynard's eyes. Eric, you're a hero. An average person will react in a predictable manner when you're crowned with status. The way a pauper reacts to reverence or a suburbanite to a live television camera. The average person reacts with giddy pride. Eric reacted with a marginal level of puzzlement. Eric's confusion was not directed at the word directed at him. It was the change he witnessed in his doctor. It was a reaction he wasn't prepared to interpret. He could sense, though not quite consciously, that their relationship had suddenly altered. The doctor quickly regained his composure and redirected the conversation. Knowing that Eric's accounts were genuine gave him and his interview a greater depth. Made his puzzle even more intriguing. Eric, I would like to ask you about your encounter at the grocery store on Thursday. What was it about the man in the store that told you he wanted to hurt Molly? What did he do to her? Did he have his gun out? There were too many questions. They flooded around Eric. What made you step in and help, Eric? Maynard had to know what it was that made Eric a hero. Thank you for listening to part 2 of The Hero Business. If you like this story so far and you want more, or you feel compelled to throw your support in this direction, the fastest route is through my website, patrickhughes.ca. There you'll find access to my other projects, links to my books and ebooks on various platforms, and a contact me function. You can also lend your valuable support by liking and subscribing and sharing on whatever platform you're visiting here. It really makes a difference. Please add your voice with a quick click if you like what you hear. I hope you share this. Don't keep any good fiction a secret. Thanks so much.